We have some breaking news tonight as well. A federal court judge has now ruled a recent ICE arrest of an immigrant inside his Minneapolis home did violate his constitutional rights.
This is a case our Fox 9 investigators brought to you earlier this week. So let's bring in Paul Bloom on this one. And Paul, we saw the video. There's been an update. Federal agents using a battering ram to get inside of that man's front door. What is the judge now saying about the tactics used here?
Yeah, Simone, in his 9-page order here, the judge finding what happened to this Liberian immigrant by the name of Garrison Gibson last weekend, with ICE breaking down his door without a judicial warrant, a clear violation of his Fourth Amendment rights, and has ordered the man's immediate release. I want to bring you back to the chaotic scene Sunday morning, North Minneapolis. Cameras rolling as armed federal agents use this battering ram to break open Gibson's front door and arrest him inside the family's home. They were recording on Facebook here. Loved ones had demanded to see a judicial warrant.
So there's this breaking news tonight about a federal court judge who just ruled that an ICE arrest in Minneapolis violated an immigrant's constitutional rights. It's a pretty big deal and ties back to a story that was covered earlier this week. The judge took a good look at what happened to a Liberian immigrant named Garrison Gibson last weekend, where ICE broke down his front door without a judicial warrant. This was deemed a clear violation of his Fourth Amendment rights, and the judge has ordered that he be released immediately. If you remember, there was quite a chaotic scene that Sunday morning in North Minneapolis, with armed federal agents using a battering ram to force their way in, all while cameras rolled. Gibson's family was understandably upset, demanding to see a warrant that never materialized. Now, let's shift gears a bit, because what's happening in the federal court system is truly remarkable, in a way that legal experts are calling unprecedented. And honestly, that's not a word I toss around lightly. We're witnessing something with no modern historical parallel, stretching from Minnesota to New York and New Jersey. The situation is way more serious than what you might be catching in the headlines. Dozens of federal judges who have lifetime appointments and no political stakes in partisan squabbles are officially saying that the Trump administration is misleading them. They're defying court orders and causing what one judge described as terror among thousands of people while trampling on vital constitutional protections. Chief Judge Patrick Schultz from the U.S. District Court in Minnesota noted that ICE likely violated more court orders in January of 2026 than some federal agencies have in their entire histories. He even mentioned being unaware of any time before when a federal court had to repeatedly threaten criminal contempt. It's a wild situation unfolding in the courts right now. It's quite astonishing when you think about a chief federal judge expressing disbelief at what's happening in our legal system, especially when he mentions considering criminal contempt charges against Trump and his administration officials. The violations have climbed past 200, and they keep increasing. On top of that, there's this interesting twist where a federal judge, appointed by Reagan, decided to resign just so he could speak openly. He took the time to write a public letter calling Trump a real threat to our democracy. He accused Trump of twisting the law for personal advantage, targeting opponents while shielding his allies from any oversight or prosecution. It's something to ponder. A judge, chosen by a Republican president, stepping down to alert the nation about the alarming things he witnessed from his unique position in the judiciary. It really paints a picture of a federal court system that has hit its breaking point. With all the contempt threats, stern warnings from judges, and that resignation letter, it feels like the judiciary, in unison, is finally vocalizing concerns that many have been whispering about for months. This situation really can't persist. Now, let's take a moment here. Mainstream media isn't exactly the most trustworthy source anymore. That's why we started Pump Politics, to provide you with genuine stories, real context, and avoid any corporate slant. If you want to keep up with the latest news, why not sign up for our free newsletter? We'll drop the news directly in your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join us. And if you'd like to support our mission, come be part of a community that values the truth. But hold on, let's switch gears for a moment. This morning, there's a notable crackdown on illegal immigration across the nation, with federal officers rolling out operations in major cities. Kristi Noem, the newly confirmed Homeland Security Secretary, was in New York this morning, observing arrests firsthand. Things have been busier than usual lately, with a senior administration official reporting that ICE made nearly 1,200 arrests in just one day, and about half of those individuals had criminal histories. So there's this whole situation where someone is in the country illegally, and that opens up the possibility for them to face arrest, regardless of whether they've committed any crimes. In Chicago, we got to see one of these enforcement operations up close. They were searching for a 25-year-old guy from Mexico who has a pretty lengthy criminal record, but yesterday they couldn't track him down. However, this morning, the surveillance team spotted him at his job, so that's where the agents were heading. Now, let me put everything into perspective for you because there's something really notable happening here. It's essential to grasp what federal judges usually do versus what they're doing now, as that contrast makes things quite remarkable. Typically, federal judges are some of the most low-key communicators in American public life. They don't hold press conferences, make political speeches, or dive into party politics. Instead, they communicate through their written opinions and orders. These documents are crafted with careful precision, and they avoid the heated language you often see in political discussions. When a federal judge notes that a government agency has likely breached more court orders in just 1 month than some agencies have in their entire history, that's not just for drama. It's a well-thought-out legal assessment based on solid evidence. The judge is basically saying that all the usual methods of persuasion, from polite suggestions to gentle reminders, have been tried and didn't work this time, which indicates that stronger measures are now necessary. And then there's that moment when a sitting federal judge decides to resign so he can speak his mind. When he writes a letter labeling the president as an existential threat to democracy, it isn't just a political move, it's a serious professional judgment. He feels that what he's witnessing is alarming enough to take the extraordinary step of stepping down from his position. You know, it's honestly hard to believe we're at a point where the chief judge in Minnesota has threatened criminal contempt because violations have soared past 200 in his district. This isn't just a small issue. It's a significant moment where a Reagan appointee even resigned to raise the alarm. The fact that these two events are happening at the same time speaks volumes about the current state of affairs. Let me give you some specifics. Back in February of 2026, an investigation by the New York Times revealed something staggering. Federal judges had issued at least 35 show-cause orders since last August. These orders compelled officials from the Trump administration to explain in open court why they shouldn't face sanctions or be held in contempt for flouting court orders in immigration detention cases. Judging by what judges from across various jurisdictions have noted, officials weren't just bending the rules, they were accused of providing dishonest testimony, misrepresenting the law, and failing to follow clear rulings promptly. Take New Jersey, for instance. The Justice Department itself admitted to violating over 50 court orders in immigration cases since early December. Their own officials fessed up to it during a court-ordered review. A federal judge analyzing a mass detention case tossed out a board decision that supported the administration's policy, claiming that the setup inflicted terror on thousands of migrants. That's the actual word he used, terror, when discussing how the administration treated these individuals through unlawful detentions and a blatant disregard for basic due process protections. Now, Chief Judge Schultz in Minnesota, confronted with these rising violations, noted he had never seen anything like it and is seriously contemplating criminal contempt charges. This situation is just wild, showing a broad and documented pattern that spans the entire country, not just isolated incidents. So let's dive deeper because there are multiple layers to this story, and each one adds vital context to our understanding of the situation and why it matters. The first layer focuses on immigration enforcement and highlights exactly what the administration has been doing in these cases. It's no wonder why judges across the nation deemed it unlawful. There's a lot going on that deserves a good look. Let's start with the immigration enforcement situation, as it's where we've seen the most extensive pushback from the courts. Understanding what's happening there helps clarify why judges are using such intense language. The approach taken by the Trump administration regarding immigration enforcement has been both speedy and aggressive, often outpacing the legal structures that are supposed to govern things like detention and deportation, as well as the due process rights of individuals involved. Judges have had to issue orders that clearly lay down the law about how people can be detained, the steps that must be taken before someone can be deported, and the protections for those with pending claims. However, the administration has repeatedly failed to follow these orders, and judges have found that these failures are not due to simple bureaucratic blunders, but seem to be intentional. For instance, the Justice Department has acknowledged over 50 violations in New Jersey, which came up during a court review involving the government's own officials. This isn't the outcome of an agency doing its best but occasionally missing the mark. It's more like an agency treating court orders like hurdles to jump over with minimal compliance instead of as serious legal commands that need to be followed properly and promptly. Now, on a broader scale, we need to consider the resignation of Judge Wolf. It's quite significant that a judge appointed by Reagan is stepping down to highlight what he perceives as a serious threat to democracy. This points to a troubling view among judges who have dealt with this administration directly. There's also the issue of judicial independence to think about. The administration has even made noises about impeaching judges who rule against it, and they've put forth legislative proposals that would limit the authority of the courts. The combination of these executive actions and political threats to the judiciary raises some serious questions about the constitutional structure of checks and balances moving forward. Altogether, these three aspects, the immigration enforcement pushback, Judge Wolf's resignation, and the threats to judicial independence, really highlight the urgency of the situation. It's crucial to take them seriously as we navigate through these turbulent times. It's really quite something to think about how the term institutional terror was used. This wasn't a casual mention or something thrown out for political reasons. It described a very real legal situation. Thousands of people found themselves in unlawful detention, all thanks to a setup that completely ignored the essential due process protections we're supposed to have under the Constitution. The whole experience of being unlawfully detained without access to the legal protections that should be guaranteed, without being allowed to see a lawyer or attend hearings, it's quite disturbing. It's almost like a legal nightmare designed to intimidate and control a group of people who often lack the means to fight back legally. This is exactly what the judge was highlighting, and he did so in a very official capacity. He wasn't just pointing out that the administration wasn't following court orders. He was saying that what was being done to these individuals violated basic constitutional rights, causing real human suffering. It's honestly hard to believe he put that in the official record, but there it is. A federal judge asserting that the Trump administration was essentially using federal law enforcement to terrorize people. Now, while we're at it, let's dive into what Chief Judge Shills in Minnesota had to say, because he really nailed it. His observations are some of the most striking and backed by solid data in the whole judicial narrative. When he remarked that ICE probably broke more court orders in just January of 2026 than some federal agencies had in their entire history, he wasn't just making wild claims for effect. He was offering a thoughtful legal comparison, based on years of knowledge and experience with how federal agencies operate in court. It wasn't exaggeration. It was a serious professional assessment of what he saw unfolding in his courtroom. He indicated that what he was witnessing was completely out of the ordinary, outside any normal experience. And then there's his comment about not recalling any previous instance where a federal court had to keep threatening contempt repeatedly just to get the government to comply. That really drives the point home about the severity of the situation. He really made quite a statement, didn't he? Essentially, he was highlighting that in his extensive experience with federal court proceedings, there's absolutely nothing else like this situation. It's unprecedented how the government has acted. And that's an important takeaway. Now let's touch on Judge Wolf. His resignation letter is probably one of the most pivotal documents in this entire saga. Its importance isn't just in the words, but also in the fact that it came from him and the reasons behind it. Mark Wolf, a Reagan appointee, spent a significant part of his career on the federal bench, thanks to a Republican president during times when such appointments reflected conservative values. He served through multiple administrations and had never before taken the remarkable step of resigning to openly criticize a sitting president. But in 2025, he felt so compelled by what he was witnessing that he opted to give up his lifetime position just to voice his concerns. In his letter, he pointed out that Trump was manipulating the law for personal and political advantages, aiming at his adversaries while shielding his allies from any scrutiny or consequences. Wolf described the erosion of legal integrity in such alarming terms that remaining silent felt incompatible with his sense of right and wrong. He felt Trump posed an existential threat to democracy itself, not just a politician with differing views or an administration with misguided policies, but a serious danger to the democratic system as a whole. This is a significant assessment coming from someone with deep roots in the Republican judicial tradition, and it's directed at a Republican president. It really emphasizes the gravity of his perspective. We're not talking about a liberal judge pushing a liberal agenda here. We're looking at a conservative judge appointed by a conservative leader saying that what he witnessed from inside the federal judiciary crossed a line his conscience couldn't ignore. Plus, Let's not forget the chilling aspect of the administration's threats towards the judiciary. This whole situation is truly concerning and unlike anything we've seen before. It's not just that the administration and its supporters are ignoring court orders, they've gone a step further by publicly threatening judges who make decisions they don't like. They're talking about impeachment, budget cuts, and even trying to strip certain powers from the courts altogether. Civil rights and legal groups have banded together, sending coalition letters that point out just how serious these threats are for our constitutional rights, urging Congress to protect judicial independence from any harmful legislation. Some Senate Republicans have even warned Trump's allies to back off from attacking the courts, making it clear that you can't just impeach or defund every judge who doesn't rule in your favor. They recognize that the tone and threats targeting the judiciary have gone too far for comfort among some within their own ranks. However, despite these warnings, no real action has been taken. This blend of consistently ignoring court orders while also threatening judges who oppose them creates a serious movement against judicial independence that's unprecedented in modern American history. It's more than just ignoring the courts. The administration is actually undermining the foundations that allow these courts to operate effectively. This mix of defiance paired with threats is what legal scholars are identifying as a pivotal moment. Harvard law professor Noah Feldman put it well when he mentioned that the courts are now faced with the question of whether the administration is systematically challenging their authority, posing an outright challenge to the rule of law. Let's break this down into 4 clear points so you can really grasp why this judicial upheaval matters beyond the courtroom antics and what we need to keep an eye on as tensions rise toward what many are calling an unavoidable constitutional showdown. First off, the extent and spread of the judicial pushback are critical because they reveal that we're witnessing a broader systematic issue instead of just isolated judicial reactions to local cases. It's interesting to look at the current situation because it shows some serious patterns and consequences. For instance, we've seen a significant number of show cause orders, 35 since August, across different jurisdictions. Then there's the Justice Department acknowledging over 50 violations just in New Jersey and more than 200 violations in Minnesota alone, with a chief judge even threatening criminal contempt. A federal judge has described detention practices as terror in an official ruling, which really gets to the heart of the issues at play. Even a Reagan appointee has felt the need to resign to speak out about what they see as a real threat to democracy. These aren't just random incidents that can be brushed off as isolated frustrations within the judicial system or mere political bias. They reflect the collective sentiment of an independent branch of government that spans various states and courts, consistently reaching the same concerns about this administration's behavior. What makes this situation particularly striking is the language that federal judges are using in their rulings. Terms like dishonest, unlawful, terror, and existential threat signal a breakdown in the usual professional relationship between the executive branch and the judiciary. This isn't just about the individual cases causing these feelings, it's about broader implications that stretch far beyond. The choice of words by these judges is important because they carry a lot of weight. For instance, when a federal judge identifies that government officials provided dishonest testimony, that's not just a dramatic statement. It's an indication that specific representatives from the executive branch have misled a federal court. Similarly, when a judge claims that a policy has inflicted terror on countless individuals, it's a serious legal judgment about how the government has used its powers inappropriately to create fear and suffering. And when a Reagan appointee publicly states that a president poses an existential threat to democracy, it goes beyond mere political disagreement and reflects a professional evaluation from someone who has served under a Republican administration. Decades spent immersed in the federal legal system really gives someone a front row seat to how things work, and that's exactly what this source is talking about. They've observed behavior that simply doesn't align with the constitutional order we're supposed to uphold. When someone with that experience speaks out, it carries more weight than any cable news commentary or political speech ever could. Now, let's dive into the threats made by the administration regarding impeaching judges and limiting court authority. The situation, paired with their ongoing refusal to comply with court orders, creates a serious challenge to judicial independence. It's a move that puts the entire framework of checks and balances at risk, and it definitely calls for a substantial response from both Congress and the public. What makes these threats particularly alarming is the impact they have alongside the defiance. If the administration only ignored court orders, the courts have tools to address that stubbornness. Things like contempt proceedings, sanctions, and even criminal referrals. Sure, it would be a long and tedious process, but the mechanisms are in place and the courts know how to wield them. But here's where it gets even trickier. When the administration is not just ignoring court orders, but also threatening the judges who issue those orders with impeachment, alongside suggesting legislation to strip courts of their authority over these orders, it's like they're launching a full-scale assault on the way the judicial system operates. They're signaling that not only will they disregard your orders, but they'll also take away your ability to enforce compliance. That goes beyond simple defiance. It's an effort to undermine judicial independence and cripple the courts as a check on executive power. If that move actually succeeds, it would fundamentally alter American constitutional governance in a way that could be nearly impossible to reverse. As we keep an eye on this situation, it's essential to look out for key developments because the tension is escalating toward a confrontation that can't be postponed indefinitely. We're starting to see moments that might force this standoff to reach a resolution, with Chief Judge Schultz's consideration of criminal contempt in Minnesota being the most pressing issue. If criminal contempt proceedings are brought against officials from the Trump administration, that would mark a significant shift in the narrative. So, let's break this down. There are a lot of federal judges stretching from Minnesota to New York to New Jersey who are stepping up and officially stating that the Trump administration has been dishonest in court, defying orders, and causing real harm to people. It's quite a serious situation. A judge appointed by Reagan even took the drastic step of resigning from his lifetime position just to alert everyone about what he considers to be a serious threat to our democracy. There's a chief federal judge who is thinking about charging the administration with criminal contempt because he's seen over 200 violations in just 1 month, something he claims he has never witnessed in the history of American law. Rather than accepting the rulings against them, the administration has chosen to respond by threatening these judges with impeachment and pushing new laws to limit the court's authority, making it harder for them to rule against the administration. This isn't just about court cases, it's more like a tug of war about whether a president whose administration has been found lying to the courts and causing unlawful suffering should be allowed to continue getting support from Congress, or if it's finally time for some accountability. It's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out, especially with the Supreme Court poised to make important decisions on executive power that could affect the upcoming midterm elections in 2026. This whole situation is being watched closely, as the outcomes could shake up our political landscape. I'm really interested in what legal experts are saying about all of this. They're calling it a crucial moment, a real turning point. It's the time when the courts will have to decide if they see this behavior as a serious challenge to the rule of law or just something they can deal with through the usual processes. The outcome of this decision is likely to shape the constitutional landscape for many years to come. So, this is definitely a big deal that ties into everything we've been talking about. I'll be sticking around to keep an eye on all the developments as they happen. If you haven't subscribed yet, you might want to do that now. I'd love to know your thoughts on where this is headed. Are the courts going to uphold their authority, or is this administration really going to shake things up? Let's chat about it.